Hello, everybody. This is Badger Wild, and we are back with another Space Engineers video. Today, we are going to be going over building your first base, surviving on a planet, and how to get to that in-game stuff that you're going to be wanting to get later in the game. So, but before we do, if you enjoy this content, if you're new to the channel, if you want to help out the channel, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. That helps out tremendously on the channel. And if you want to go a little bit further, for 99 cents a month, you can see all of these videos earlier than anyone else as soon as I get them uploaded and set up. You can do all that very early. So, with that out of the way, let's get started. Starting in Space Engineers, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be inside of the pod. Now, I've done a in-depth video on the survival pods and what we're doing, but we're going to do a little bit more on the Earth-like because this is going to be the first planet you're probably going to try out. This is going to be the first time you're going to dip your toes into Space Engineers survival, and there's a steep learning curve to everything. It's just best to know where everything is and where it's at. So we have the space pod. You will be dropped out of the sky down to here, and it has everything you need to get started. Now, when you are doing Space Engineers, you do have access to a whole lot of equipment, but going in here, we'll pop into the inventory. Sometimes you have your own rifles. You won't have the rifles because I'm in survival mode, or not survival, creative mode here. But you will have a hydrogen bottle, an oxygen bottle, a baseline grinder, a baseline drill, and a baseline welder. In your passenger seat over here, you are going to have an S10 pistol, 4 magazines, which is not enough to kill a Saberoid, unfortunately. And you are going to have a data pad. Now, if I were you, I would click on this because it will tell you where you want to go. It's got a station, and sometimes these stations will have things. They will have jobs you can do. There will be things you can buy. Some stations sell ships, some sell ores, some sell parts. If you find a station out there and it's got all the ores, they will sometimes be selling something you can't get on Earth, which means you can have a little bit of an advantage going into the next deal just by completing a couple missions. Having money means that in those rare occurrences that you get taken out and you happen to find your way back to a base and they're selling some ships or something, you may have enough money to buy you a baseline in-game ship and then head off and do what you want with it. To do this, we're going to add the GPS marker. We're going to click OK. Go into GPS, and like I said, this is the first thing you want to do. You want to have this shown in HUD so that when we pop out here, we can see the station is 30-something kilometers away. So if we want to move to the station, we can do that. Now, operating on your ship, you do have 4 atmospheric thrusters. In reality, it only takes about 2 to get this thing off the ground. The one thing you are going to have to worry about, you are not going to be able to do this right off the bat. So don't mess with the engines. Only cut off things that you are able to do that. And by doing that, you can simply access what I like to call the G menu. This is just toolbar configuration, which has all the blocks on here. You can go to home page and then click progression. You'll then be able to see the progression tree and see what you need to build new stuff. A lot of times, things that you want to build, cockpits, things of that nature, or engines for this case, don't require you to build anything crazy. Sometimes you just got to rebuild a landing gear or something. And a lot of times, parts on your survival pod can simply be ground down to a point, and we'll show that off right now. So when you are going to grind down a part on your survival pod, and we'll weld it back up here just so we can get the advantage. We're going to crouch down here, walk up to our landing gear, and we're going to cut it down below functional. And then weld it back up. Sometimes this can be done. Sometimes it can't. If it can't be done right there, just simply cut the parts off of the part that you want to make, turn around and rebuild it somewhere else. Your toolbar will have all sorts of stuff you can build and add to the survival pod. But we're not going to worry about that right now. What we're worrying about is the survival pod and how to use it and where everything's at. So you have your seat here. If you want to recharge your battery, you can hop in the seat and recharge. If you're on a planet that doesn't have an atmosphere, your survival pod should be enclosed and it will have oxygen. Which brings us to our next thing. Where's our oxygen supply at? So, on the side of the survival pod and almost everything but the space pod, this includes the moon pod. On the right side, facing away, or well, no, the left side. If you are sitting in the seat, it is going to be on the left side of your ship. The battery's on the right side. And over here, you have this access panel that you can get into. Simply press the access. You will have your oxygen, your hydrogen bottle, and you have a limited amount of ice. Now, this thing requires ice to operate. You're going to have to put ice into it to make it work. Sorry, them's the rules. I don't make them. But if you're lucky like me, you land on an ice planet or you land in an area with some snow, like off in the background there, you'll have the ability to make this all work. Continuing around to the very back of the pod, this is where your survival kit is. And for new players, the survival kit is where you can produce things. Now, simply grabbing stone, if you've got a drill, you can go over here, you can just mine whatever you want out of these rocks. You can throw it in here. This is something that people have trouble with, and they go, I've put stone inside the survival kit, and the survival kit is not doing anything. That is because you will have to convert it into ingots. And what this does is it will produce a certain amount of gravel, but you will receive magnesium, silicone, and iron. This will give you the ability to build up some parts, and when you can, then you can start building components, which will let you start building blocks. Just remember, as much as you put in here, you will have to manually turn it in. You'll have to manually select stone and put it over here so that the system will start taking whatever stone you put in here and turn it into gravel, which will then make ingots of stuff. That much is pretty much done right there. On the side of the survival kit is a small box right here. And if you push this box with the selector or action button and hold, it will recharge your oxygen, your health, your H2O if you have access lines hooked up to it, and your power. All will be filled up if you are accessing this. On the right side, you have your battery. And if you're going to survive in Space Engineers, power is going to be one of those things you're going to run into an issue with very early game. Being able to solve your power issues early, and this usually just means coming up with a clever way of doing it, either having some wind, some solar, or using gas. That is ultimately what's going to make the difference in whether or not your survival pod works or not. That being said, the survival pod also has a couple of other things. It's got a few of these atmospheric thrusters on it. This does mean that if you understand what's going on, you can swap this seat out with a cockpit eventually, which can be unlocked, which going up here into progression. A cockpit can be unlocked if you build a landing gear. Now, you will still have to get the equipment together to build the cockpit, but all of that can be built in the survival kit. The unfortunate thing is these cannot be built without getting to Area 2, because you are going to need at least metal grids and large steel tubes, both of which have to be made in an assembler. They can't be made in the survival kit. And this is how Space Engineers caps your survival ability and gets you from one point to the next. Inside the survival pod, don't worry about finding it. It has a beacon, so you can keep track of your beacon. I would suggest, however, going into your GPS, and if you can find your beacon at any point, or if you can't, in my opinion, right now, you can just simply sit there. As long as you're able to see that, you'll know where your pod is at all times. Now, the beacon works to a certain point, but you can increase the antenna range. I suggest not getting too far out of antenna range, or at least coming up with some landmarks so you know where your pod is. Sometimes you're going to land in an area that just doesn't have very good landmarks, and you're going to have to explore the area and learn it yourself after a while. But like I said, that is the survival pod. That is how this thing operates and works. It does have other things. It does have a parachute, and it's got an ore detector, so if it lands anywhere with ore, you're going to find it. The kicker here is you're not going to have enough equipment here to turn this into a rover. You can, however, I believe, run this thing off of, you can fly it with only 2 atmospheric thrusters and use the other 2 for forward and backward. The problem is you also have to build a gyroscope, which requires the next stage. So to get a vehicle and get yourself to a point where you can start building vehicles properly, that'll be video 2. But like I said, look for that video. And if you guys are watching this and you're new to the channel, like I said, like, comment, subscribe. And if you want to see these videos early, we have a membership program, 99 cents a month, and you can see these videos before anyone else gets to see them. It's just a little perk I add to the deal. It also helps out the channel. But anyway, folks, that is all I got on the survival pod on the ground. And I am Badger Wild saying stay safe, stay frosty, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye for now.